Okay, just to warm up, what was the last movie you saw?
The last movie I saw was The Lion King with my 2-year-old daughter.
The remake?
The remake, yeah. Well, if you're talking about movies on television, I probably saw Secret Life of Pets 2 maybe half a dozen times, back to back.
Yeah, okay. Did you like The Lion King remake?
Did I like The Lion King? Yeah, I did like it. I think I prefer the original animated movie though. You know, I'm not a big fan of real talking animals compared to I like an interpretation of an animal rather than the actual.
I agree.
You know, it's not a wildlife program.
The last movie I saw, 1917.
Oh yeah,
we only watched it last week.
Yeah. Before that.
Before that, I saw Aeronauts.
Oh yeah, did you like it?
I did like it. I thought it's an amazing story. I had no idea about that story beforehand, and I had a couple of my friends were part of the crew, so I kind of went to it to see it for them as well.
In Germany, it comes directly to Amazon Prime. We don't have the chance to see it on the big screen.
Oh, that's a shame because it's such a visual film.
Yeah. And you?
I think the last film I saw, I mean, it wasn't a new one that's come out. It was The Aviator. The Scorsese film.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean the new sort of films. I think it was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I watched that in cinema.
And I guess you liked it.
I liked it. I love Tarantino, and the performance in that are really good.
Okay, I always wanted to talk to a director who directed a war movie to ask him what is the difference between a war movie and an anti-war movie.
Well, I think all war movies are anti-war movies. I've never seen a pro-war movie. Okay. I think you start from a standpoint that war is hell, but you're not making a historical document. You're not making a movie about that is like a school lesson. What you're trying to do. The reason I suppose that you make a war movie or you go and see a war movie is because it's one of the few situations where human beings are pushed to the absolute extreme of what they're capable of doing. You're looking to try and find a way to define the human condition, and this human beings at their most naked and their most stripped away, and not only that, but millions of men in this war had the same experience. And so it seems that if you're any kind of an artist, you have a sort of duty to try and answer the big questions, why these things happened, and perhaps make an audience understand it in a visceral way, feel it, rather than just think about it.
I don't know. I don't know how you would sort of define the two, because in a way one can be the other, in terms of I don't think they're separate. They're separate genres. Like there's anti-war sentiments in this, but it's not definitively an anti-war film. This isn't. I wouldn't even say, to an extent, this is a war film. Mm-hmm. This is a film about human. This one particularly is about a human experience, and they're using the context of war because that situation is a situation a circumstance, that stretches the human to physically and emotionally to their absolute limits. And for me, it's about what those, being stretched to those limits, how that teaches you what you come back to. And in a sense, this film is a huge film about sacrifice, comradeship, friendship, love, essentially. I think love is the thing that runs through all of these and that runs beneath the film. And love is about what you do for others rather than what you do against others. So in a sense, there is an anti-war kind of message to this, but also it's also made in respect of the men who served in the war itself. So you wouldn't want to undermine the experience of these men and the fact that they gave their lives for each other. I think it's about, again, it's about, I don't know, sorry, it's a rambling answer, but it's about doing something, the lengths of which you can go to when it's in service of something greater than yourself. And that doesn't necessarily mean king and country in this thing. This is about friendship. This is about brotherhood. And it's about love.
Now you shot 1917 in a very special way with very long takes. How big was the area you shot, and what was so special about shooting this movie in that way?
Well, the reason to shoot in one is an emotional reason. You want the audience to be as close to the characters as possible and to feel like there's no way out, feel that there's no way of escaping this journey, and to feel every minute passing. And in terms of the land we crossed, we probably crossed miles and miles. We dug over a mile of trenches alone, and then there's no man's land, and fields and orchards and farmhouses and canals and towns and rivers. So we probably travelled, a long way.
There is a kind of recurrent symbol in the movie. I mean, the flowers. Can you explain what the meaning is?
I think people have to see and judge for themselves. Like any symbol, it should have multiple meanings and not be too defined. But Blake talks about home when he sees the cherry blossom, and later on they reappear. So it doesn't take a genius to see that they refer back to him and to the idea of home, which runs like an undertow in this movie, the longing to be home and what it represents.
Well, first off, I mean, I've never had an experience before where they call cut and I can't stop crying after a scene. And as an actor, the whole one continuous take method, some scenes lasted like 9-10 minutes. And that allows you to just throw yourself in that situation and just really live it, and whatever happens, and you are fully immersed in that scene. And even though, we're actors and we've got dialogue and there's choreography of the movement, you forget all that and you just live it, and you're just in the First World War, and that's it. So it's a very immersive experience, and also a very collaborative experience, and a real big teamwork on this movie. Every department sort of merged into one. And the feeling was very mutual, which George always says, and very, very beautifully. And it was an amazing experience. I've never had an experience like it.
How did you prepare before every scene, before you shot it? Can you give us an example for that?
Yeah, well, because we sort of shot the film as much as we could in chronological order. So we used to run the lines from the beginning, up until the point that we'd got to. So we'd, be ready to go, the scene, a third of the way through the film or something. And do you want to go from the top? And we'd just run the scenes all the way so we knew the conversations we'd had, we knew our relationship fresh, to then land in the right point to when we started the scene.
I actually wish we had like a little measurement thing.
Yeah, I remember like Gary, one of the grips, he came down. Well, there was one scene in particular because he's a runner, and he came down and it was like, we hadn't even got to lunch. And he went, "Boy, we've done 10,000 steps today," which is like your daily thing. And that was like we'd only been working for about 3 hours, just going up and down this hill.
The thing is with this film as well, as soon as the film starts, they're sent on a mission instantly, and there is no moment of breath or there's no stop at all in this film. So every scene was literally go, 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 and it was always constantly on the move. And even for us as actors, on a normal film set, you'd have coverage, so in the time that the crew would take the time to set the cameras up, you'd have about 15-20 minutes to sit around. Whereas this, obviously, there was no coverage, it was just one continuous shot. So we would literally either be rehearsing, and if we wasn't rehearsing, we would be shooting. And I mean, it was literally like it'd be lunch, and we'd eat our lunch for 5 minutes and we'd be back again, and there never was like a rest time. It was very, very physical, very physical.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't have everything that they would have in it. Like certain things which would have been metal for them would have been, plastic or something for us. But pretty much it was important for us to have, as much as we could, the real weight of everything, because it changes how you move. It changes how you move through the mud and the landscape and also from we were rehearsing for like 6 months before we started, and pretty much from the first day of rehearsals, we'd just wear our packs, everything for every scene that we rehearsed when we were doing military training, to get used to that feeling and the movement.
Pouches.
Oh yeah, fingers and thumbs with all of them. So yeah. I mean, but it's great because it makes it feel real, and hopefully that translates. Yeah.
How long was the longest scene you filmed, and did you have to cut some scenes?
I didn't have to cut anything. everything we shot is in the movie because we couldn't take anything out. And the longest was probably 10, 11 minutes at a time, which is a long time, but of course it's not the whole film. But sometimes the longest scenes were emotional scenes because you didn't want to interrupt the performance rather than for technical reasons.
All of it. All of it. Do you know what? There never really was like an easy day, was there? Never. Every day there was sort of a new challenge. And you know, every day, I mean, we put our heart and souls into it, so then there never really was like a harder take. I mean, there was every scene was hard in its own way. I mean, the no man's land sequence with Blake and Schofield, there's a moment when the camera sort of lowers down to Blake and Schofield's feet and you can see their feet just slipping everywhere. And I always say it's not really like walking on mud, it was like walking on ice. That's how slippy it was, and you actually had to focus and use all your brain power just to know how to put one foot in front of the other while crouching, while having the gear on, while, you know, acting at the same time. So, yeah.
Yeah, it was. I think the first 2 weeks were like a kind of, because we've been rehearsing for months, so it's sort of almost.
How many weeks did you shoot completely?
16.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So, and although we've been rehearsing and almost, so you know, we finished rehearsals one day on the Friday and we started shooting on the Monday, so we were, you know, in the swing of things. But we hadn't got used to that, which was actually a really sort of inspiring feeling, that uncompromising nature if there is no edit. So unless it's, you know, if perfection's such a thing, what we were trying to get it perfect every day, and we would not go home until we got it, or if we didn't get it on that day, we'd just do it again. We'd just come back the next day, because you can't save it in an edit. And so and that first 2 weeks of being a bit like, right, well, we do not stop. Okay. But you know, but that said, that, you know, the one thing that's to be said with all of the kind of physicality and the kind of, you know, concentration, all of that stuff, is nothing to what those men would have gone through. So however kind of tough a day was, we got to go home and have dinner and a bath, and like, you know, and we're all doing this in sort of service of a story about what those men went through. So that was always a leveler in terms of kind of understanding a bit of perspective on. I don't know if we have I don't know if I have a favourite scene necessarily. Yeah. It's just the fact that we were doing these long sequences. When we got a shot, it was like someone had scored a penalty or something. Like it was, and again, it was the most mutual experience, you know, where there was no lead element in terms of like design, camera, acting when we were filming. And so when we got some of those long takes, you know, you'd get to the point that was the cut, and we'd all be celebrating, because you kind of knew, like, we'd always complete a scene, but you sort of knew the ones which had worked. You kind of knew the ones where you were in sync with everything and everything was working in timings. And when they'd call cut, we'd all be like hugging each other, like, go on. And once you've done it, you're like, okay, let's do it again, let's try and get another one. Yeah. So it was that feeling, which I don't know if you get that as regularly on a regular.
No, you don't at all.
On a regular set.
Not at all.
You know.
Don't.
So it was that kind of joy, you know, that kind of excitement of like, right, we got it, okay, next one. To get that every day was special.
Yeah. I mean, all of it was fun. If I'm not, I mean, as I said earlier, if we wasn't rehearsing, we were shooting, and if we wasn't shooting, we was rehearsing, or maybe we'd get 5 minutes to eat lunch.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, of course we'd have our little giggles and our laughs throughout the day, but most of the time we was telling that story and we was living in those circumstances. So it never was like a.
Without it being doom and gloom, like it was. I think it was more just like we were just really focused on what we were doing. You know, like, and there was a sort of almost like in the story there was a time pressure. You know, even with the light, with it, everyone once they were there was just focused on getting it, and everyone was having a great time getting it, but it was just about getting it.
Well, I think for me, I think it's with Sam. This is his first script that he's written with Christie. So Sam had a really great knowledge on our characters and sort of, you know, their backgrounds and what sort of men they are, and had a very particular vision on what he wanted. So as an actor, to be sort of guided by a director that knows exactly you know, what he wants was very comforting. But the thing is with Sam as well, like he just gives such great direction, and it only takes just one sentence to sort of sum up where he wants you to go with a scene. Sam is a genius.
Yeah,
he really is.
He is. I think he's a really sort of sensitive human bloke, but he has this amazing sort of understanding of the maths of how to create a feeling, if you know what I mean, and not in a sort of weird way in real life, but in terms of we're creating a story. You know, what we're trying to, we want it to be truthful and real all the time, but we're making that truth and we're making that reality. And his understanding of how to do that, of like how and when you give information, in terms of the way the camera moves and the way that we portray a scene, and kind of understanding the effect that will have on an audience, was like unlike anyone I've ever worked with.
So last question. These days there is a big discussion on social media about the meaning of cinema itself. On the one hand, there are people like Martin Scorsese or Francis Ford Coppola who prefer storytold movies and say that they are not the fans of the modern blockbusters. And on the other hand, there are the supporters of the modern blockbusters, especially the Marvel movies. What do you think about this discussion, and what does cinema mean for you?
Well, in that discussion, I think there's no right or wrong. There's only interesting and less interesting.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's, for me, is the answer. You know, I'm not going to lump all Marvel movies together because, you know, I love Guardians of the Galaxy and I really like Black Panther. You know, I'm not going to lump all indie movies together because there are some indie movies that I hate. Yeah. You know, so you want to. What I think is important is that people making movies that are not superhero movies or franchise movies step up and use what cinema gives them: scale, immersive sound. You know, this magnificent opportunity to transport an audience beyond just a small image, to make movies that demand to be seen on the big screen. That is what's important. And you know, all Francis and Marty Scorsese want is what everyone wants, is the ability to choose, is a variety. You want a variety of movies on big screens and a variety of movies on your small screens. And that's what, you know, we have to keep fighting for.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, cinema for me is just an experience of going into the cinema and walking away with a feeling, you know, and that's why cinema is so powerful, I think, because it allows a person to just completely forget about everything for the day, forget about their own lives, and just fully become immersed in, you know, this story. And whether they feel sad, angry, happy afterwards, it's something special. Mm-hmm. It's very powerful to do that. It's almost like listening to music. Yeah, but about the social media thing, I don't know. I mean, people just say things, don't they? I don't know. I'm rubbish at social media anyway, so I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, likewise, I don't have social media, so I don't know. I'm even worse.
But do you prefer one kind of cinema? Do you prefer art house or blockbuster?
No, I think with I mean, we never discussed any of this on set, but obviously now you're kind of like the film is coming out amidst that conversation. I don't think there is one type of cinema that is right or wrong or better or worse. I think what's wonderful about this film, and I think is a kind of marker of, again, it's not a right or a wrong, but this was made purely with the story in mind. You know, this was made because it was made for the story and the message that story would give, and it wasn't pandering to any of kind of putting bums on seats in terms of this story will suit that, like kind of will give us an audience there. It was everyone was just about making that story, and once you kind of hand that over, it's just the luck of the draw as to if it gets received well or not. And I understand that this is an industry and that, you know, we need to kind of, that industry needs to have a turnover, and that turnover must be financial, and some things are driven towards that. But I think kind of the films that people react best to are the ones where they recognise that it's just about the story. They recognise that it's about the emotion and the human experience above the financial. And so, yeah, I think that's, if we can keep making films with that in mind, you know, some of those films actually turn out to be the model for what people then make into a kind of the financial perfect film. So I think if you can just be true to the story and be at peace with whatever happens beyond that, that's the best way of being.